In the dim corridors of St. Mary's Hospital in a quiet Midwestern town, where the air hung heavy with the scent of antiseptic and unspoken fears, Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at the charts that mocked her every effort. It was the winter of 2024, and a rare, aggressive strain of pneumonia had swept through the community like a silent storm. The patients, farmers, teachers, young mothers, lay in their beds, their breaths shallow and labored, machines beeping in futile rhythm. Not even the best specialists flown in from Chicago could stem the tide. "We've tried everything," Elena whispered to her colleague one fateful night, her voice cracking under the weight of defeat. "Antibiotics, ventilators, experimental drugs, nothing's working." But in the basement kitchen, far from the sterile glow of the ICU, a woman named Rosa Martinez stirred a pot of soup with hands calloused from years of quiet labor, unaware that her simple act of opening a door would rewrite the story of salvation. Rosa was the hospital's cook, a humble immigrant from a small village in Mexico who had crossed the border 2 decades ago with nothing but a faded photograph of her late husband and a dream of a better life for her children. She worked the graveyard shift, chopping vegetables and simmering broths that filled the wards with fleeting warmth. At 58, with silver threads weaving through her dark hair and a smile that could light up the darkest room, Rosa had seen her share of hardship. Her own son had died young from a preventable illness back home, a loss that had etched deep lines of empathy into her soul. She wasn't educated like the doctors upstairs, no medical degree, no white coat, but she understood suffering in a way that textbooks never could. "Food is love," she often said to her coworkers in broken English, her accent thick like the stews she prepared. "It heals what medicine forgets." That night, as the snow fell outside like a blanket of despair, Rosa heard the muffled cries from the floors above. The patients were isolated, families barred at the doors due to contagion fears. Doctors had declared it hopeless. Some whispered of miracles, but hope was fading faster than the patient's vital signs. The turning point came unexpectedly, as profound realizations often do. Rosa was finishing her shift when a young nurse, tear-streaked and exhausted, stumbled into the kitchen for a cup of coffee. "They're giving up on room 312, the nurse confided, her voice trembling. "The little girl, Sophia. Her parents are outside begging to see her one last time. But protocols. We can't risk it." Rosa paused, her spoon hovering over the steaming pot. Sophia was only 8, with wide eyes that reminded Rosa of her granddaughter back in Texas. The child had been fighting for weeks, her tiny body ravaged, and now the doctor said it was only a matter of hours. Something stirred in Rosa's chest. A fire kindled by memories of her son's final days, alone in a clinic with no one to hold his hand. "Protocols," Rosa muttered, tasting the word like bitter herbs. In that moment she realized the illness wasn't just in the lungs. It was in the isolation, the severed bonds of humanity that left souls adrift. Without a word, she wiped her hands on her apron and headed for the service door at the back of the kitchen, a forgotten exit that led to the alley where delivery trucks unloaded supplies. Heart pounding, Rosa cracked open the door, the cold wind rushing in like an uninvited guest. Outside, huddled against the snow, were Sophia's parents, Maria and Juan, their faces etched with desperation. They had been camping there for days, pleading with security. "Por favor," Maria whispered when she saw Rosa, her eyes wide with surprise. "Our daughter. We just want to say goodbye." Rosa glanced back at the empty kitchen, then at the couple. In her village, doors were always open. Neighbors shared meals, sorrows, and joys without question. Here in America, where she had built a new life scrubbing pots and feeding the forgotten, she had learned caution. But kindness, she knew, was a universal language, one that transcended borders and rules. "Come," Rosa said softly, stepping aside. "Quickly. Through here." It was a risk, her job, perhaps even arrest. But in that instant, selflessness overpowered fear. She led them through the labyrinth of storage rooms and up the back stairs, her footsteps light as if guided by an invisible force. Word of the breach spread like wildfire through the hospital's underbelly. At first, it was just Sophia's family slipping in, their whispers and tears filling the room with a warmth the ventilators couldn't provide. Juan held his daughter's hand, singing a lullaby from their hometown, while Maria stroked her hair, recounting stories of summer picnics and family gatherings. Miraculously, Sophia's monitors steadied. Her fever dipped slightly, color returning to her cheeks. Dr. Vasquez, alerted by a frantic page, burst into the room ready to enforce quarantine, but she froze at the sight. The child's eyes fluttering open, a weak smile forming as she felt her parents' presence. "How?" Elena stammered, checking the charts in disbelief. It wasn't medicine. It was connection. The raw power of human touch igniting a spark where science had failed. Inspired, other nurses began whispering to Rosa, who became the unlikely gatekeeper. One by one, she opened that humble door for more families. Elderly spouses, worried siblings, even a group of school friends for a teenage boy in critical care. The unexpected turns multiplied. Hospital administration caught wind and chaos ensued. Security was called, protocols invoked like sacred texts. "You're endangering everyone!" The director bellowed at Rosa in his office, his face red with fury. She stood there, apron still dusted with flour, her gaze steady. "Senor, the danger is in closing doors," she replied calmly. "My son died alone. These people, they need love to fight." Her words hung in the air, a profound realization dawning on the room. Tests later showed no spike in infections. If anything, recovery rates climbed. Patients who had been on the brink began responding to treatments, their wills bolstered by the influx of compassion. It turned out the isolation had weakened immune systems as much as the virus. Studies would later confirm it. But in that moment, it was instinct, pure and human. The emotional climax crested on a stormy evening when the entire ICU teetered on collapse. 5 patients coded simultaneously, alarms blaring like a symphony of doom. Doctors scrambled, but exhaustion had dulled their edges. Rosa, hearing the pandemonium from below, didn't hesitate. She rallied the kitchen staff, fellow immigrants, janitors, aides, and together they opened not just the back door, but every barrier they could. Families flooded in, forming circles of prayer, sharing meals Rosa had prepared. Hearty pozole that warmed bellies and souls, tamales wrapped in stories of resilience. In room 407, an old veteran named Tom, whose family had driven from across state lines, gripped his wife's hand as she read from their wedding album. His heart, faltering moments before, stabilized amid tears and laughter. "You saved us," Tom whispered to Rosa later as doctors marveled at the turnarounds. It was an act of generosity that rippled outward, transforming the hospital from a fortress of fear to a haven of hope. As dawn broke the next day, the storm cleared, and so did the crisis. Patients recovered, not solely from drugs, but from the reminder that humanity's greatest medicine is each other. Rosa faced no punishment. Instead, the hospital reformed its policies, integrating family involvement into care plans. News spread across the USA, from bustling New York to sun-soaked California, inspiring similar acts in hospitals nationwide. People shared her story on social media, calling her the door opener, a symbol of quiet heroism. Rosa returned to her kitchen, humble as ever, but with a quiet glow. "We all have doors to open," she told a reporter who sought her out. "Sometimes it's the smallest one that lets in the most light." In the end, the tale of St. Mary's wasn't about medical miracles, but the enduring power of kindness. It reminded a weary world that selflessness can bridge divides, heal wounds, and ignite change. No matter our station, doctor, or cook, we hold the key to someone's salvation. And in opening our doors, we find our own hearts mended, leaving us inspired to believe that hope, like love, is never truly locked away.